I'm with Rahul Verma, Senior Fellow at the Center for Policy Research think tank right here in New Delhi, and Yashwant Deshmukh, well-known psephologist, political analyst, and director of Sea Water, two of India's most perceptive political analysts and familiar faces at ThePrint. And today we are talking about a number of political events that are taking place across the country. In a sense, it's like a Jaiza of Indian politics. The bulldozer politics of Yogi Adityanath has reached the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is taking up the case of the Jamiat Ulema-e-Hind against the bulldozing of private homes, private property. We've seen a few days ago that a gentleman called Javed Ahmed in Prayagraj, his home was bulldozed by the UP police. Rahul Gandhi, the Congress leader, has been summoned by the Enforcement Directorate right here in New Delhi. We've seen how Congress leaders have been brutally assaulted by the Delhi police. And not least, the opposition, or at least large parts of the opposition, are coming together. They've held the first meeting to decide upon a presidential candidate for the polls that will take place a month or so from now. But first of all, gentlemen, let me welcome you to the Print Debates. Rahul and Yashwant, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Rahul, several parties did not attend: the Aam Aadmi Party, the TRS of Telangana, YSR Jagan's Andhra Pradesh. What is the meaning of this? The fact that even if Farooq Abdullah's name or Gopal Gandhi's name has been mentioned, but does it really mean anything?
Sure. The first thing is that every time, and at least for last 3 decades, whenever presidential elections take place, opposition parties do try to come together and put up a consensus candidate. This is important. Of course, the post of the president is not just ceremonial, but is important in times when the party system is very, very competitive and there is possibility of a fractured mandate that might come, and the role of president becomes very, very important. So if you look through the 90s, President Shankar Dayal Sharma or K.R. Narayanan, they had to make very important decision who to invite to form the government. And that's why no one wants to leave this election to chance. Even when, for most parts, I don't think there has been any election for the president's post when the opposition has managed to trounce the ruling party's candidate. Mm-hmm. So ruling party's candidate has always won the election. There have been times when the ruling party's candidate have won by unanimous choice. For example, when Abdul Kalam's name was proposed in 2002 by Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, he almost became a unanimous candidate for all parties. And same happened with Pranab Mukherjee's name, almost many parties. So even when, so the post is really, really important, and it becomes important for these opposition parties to get a consensus candidate. It's difficult given that there are 20-25 parties on the opposition side to get everyone along in the first go. But I think the process has begun, and they will try. No one has said, even among Aam Aadmi Party or TRS or YSR, has not said that they are not going to support opposition's candidate. They're saying, first decide who the candidate is going to be, and then we'll take a decision what has to be done. Okay. So going forward, I think in next 2 weeks, you will see much more such meetings taking place, but it does not mean anything beyond that. It's just at the moment for selecting presidential candidate.
Okay, and I think the one party whose name I forgot is Naveen Patnaik's Biju Janata Dal, which has more or less stood in the middle, not really challenging the BJP, especially in the center. Yashwant Deshmukh, can I ask you about the assault on several Congress leaders around Rahul Gandhi's summoning by the Enforcement Directorate? We are not going to go into the why Rahul Gandhi is being summoned, because I think that is a subject around the National Herald, who owns what, how much money was given by the Young Indian company to the National Herald. I think that's far too complicated. Let's look at the politics of it. Delhi police, and we have seen gruesome pictures of women MPs. Jyoti of Tamil Nadu, she has been assaulted. Her kurta was torn. Mr. Chidambaram has accused the Delhi police of breaking a rib. Why should the Delhi police assault members of parliament, politicians in this way? Isn't that completely reprehensible?
I think in any civilized society, any kind of mishandling or manhandling the people of any person, not just because she happens to be a member of parliament or any VIP. I mean, nobody will appreciate any kind of such a scenario. So, I mean, obviously, we stand agree to agree on this one. At least everybody who would be looking at those things would certainly not be appreciative. Having said that, Jyoti, what I was more alarmed actually was uh, how much reaction did it really generate? This entire Congress protest. I was really alarmed at the video I actually tweeted yesterday that it's a very, very depressing scene to see a main opposition party trying to make a protest out there and look at the turnout. I was really alarmed, इससे ज्यादा ज्योति भीड़ रागनी नायक जब स्टूडेंट यूनियन की पॉलिटिक्स करती थी उनके पीछे आ जाती जितनी वहां पर दिखाई दे रही थी. And that is a very sorry state of affair. First of all, your question is absolutely taken in that nobody is going to be appreciative of the police brutality.
No, that's a fair point. बहुत कम लोग उतरे थे उनके defense में.
Yeah, but I am more alarmed that the lack of protest or lack of reaction in general against what even police did. You know what I'm trying to say. So ideally speaking, any such thing, first of all, if at all, people feel that what is being done or summoned by ED is politicized, which big number of people do say that, that ED and CBI, they have become a political tool. Yet in this particular case, I did not see much of the mass support getting on the ground. And that is something which is worrying for me as far as the health of the Congress is concerned. The two chief ministers did come out for a token show out there, but Congress still manages to rule two states, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh. We did not see any mass protest on the ground, even in these two Congress ruled states.
That's right.
So, we have seen when something of big chakka jam used to happen, even the Setuk or the left parties or anybody, at least for 2-3 hours across the urban India, at least we used to see, okay, traffic jam ho gaya, ye ho gaya, 2-3 ghante problem rahega. It is something like that.
Also, the opposition parties did not come out in support of
Nobody did.
fellow opposition parties, considering so many leaders were in Delhi on the same.
Exactly. कोई भी moral support भी देने के लिए वहां पे नहीं आया उस तरीके से कि okay, let's go and sit on a dharna that an opposition leader is being harassed. So I think there are few things which probably for us to understand. Somewhere down the line, I feel that the public perception is that this is not a case where party or country is involved. It is more to do with your personal problem. Somehow this, I'm just trying to analyze the public perception, the built of the public perception around the national, that okay, ye aapka personal mamla hai, you took it in the share in your name, whatever. You come out of clean out of this. This is not something related to, ki democracy ki chule hil jayengi and, how it is related to me. That's what the general public is saying. So much so that even the Congress sympathizers are also not getting agitated by it. To an extent that they would come down on the street and block. So,
like हमारे यहाँ print के अंदर एक story भी थी that other Congress leaders are asking, of course, off the record, कि अगर हमारे साथ ऐसा होता, would the Congress party also come out in a support like this, or is it just कि क्योंकि Rahul Gandhi is being summoned by ED, इसीलिए उसकी support में जो है इस तरह के protest हो रहा है?
Of course, there is. There would be various angles to how people react, and this is one of the legit angles that the Congress insiders or other Congress leaders would be asking. From purely from a psephologist perspective, when I put my glasses of being a psephologist and as a student of electoral democracy,
right,
the lack of the groundswell that alarmed me, and that doesn't give a very good signal for a party which is trying to, not just give a competition to BJP, but actually now trying to keep itself ahead from the from the other opposition claimants like Mamata Banerjee or Arvind Kejriwal. Imagine मैं एक example दे रहा हूँ, शायद राहुल अभी
Rahul, I'd like to. Rahul, I'd like to.
अगर कल राहुल गांधी की जगह पर अरविंद केजरीवाल होते, जिनसे पूछताछ चल रही होती, तो दिल्ली का नजारा क्या होता आप मुझे बताइए. I mean, that's the kind of question which I am trying to answer myself. Whether the protest would have been to the same volume, whether the groundswell would have been of the same, whether the narrative in the media would have been the same, whether Arvind Kejriwal would have handled this and taken it to the altogether different level of narrative building.
Okay, let me bring Rahul in here. Rahul, what do you think? Why do you think nobody really cares कि Rahul Gandhi के साथ क्या हो रहा है?
Yeah, I do think Congress party members do care. If they didn't care, they would not have been in Delhi protesting and engaging with the police. Okay. But I think what Yashwant was trying to point out is basically you have to break this question into different parts. One is whether there is an involvement, can it be proven in court of law that there was a malified intention behind the deeds.
See, let's look at the politics. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm getting into the politics of it. आपने शायद एक film देखी होगी सरकार जिसमें अमिताभ बच्चन थे, and people wanted to kill Amitabh the Sarkar. So somebody said, सरकार को मारने से कुछ नहीं होगा, सरकार की सोच को मारना होगा. So if you think about the politics, what's happening in last 5-6 years, the BJP realizes to remain nationally dominant, it needs a very, very weak Congress. Because if Congress is not there in the picture, then you will have a very, very fragmented opposition. But to defeat the Congress, you have to basically, in some ways, defeat the dynasty. Because the whole Congress party is glued around the dynasty. Now, how do you defeat the dynasty? You slowly beat, if you directly, remember in 2014-15, people were agitating, put Robert Vadra behind jail because he's involved. That's not how politics is done. You are slowly basically creating this scenario where now the reason why don't you have groundswell support for Gandhi Parivar is that over last 6-7 years, the politics has managed to convey this, that there is that members of Gandhi family are involved in certain activities, which is basically benefiting them. So over a period of time, now you have created this impression, or at least created this doubt among many people that maybe these guys are involved and have, taken advantage of those positions. So that's what the politics is.
But the fact that Rahul Gandhi has been summoned by the Enforcement Directorate for the 4th day, I mean, that is quite significant as well. Whether or not, again, like I said, we are not going into the rights and wrongs of what happened and why he's been summoned, whether on the National Herald case and all these allegations of corruption. But it is a serious matter. But like you're saying, like both of you are saying, I mean, very few people care in the country. And let me also connect this with...
And just one more point. And at the end of the day, you don't have to forget that all politicians are also human beings. And human beings have tendency of taking revenge when they get a chance. So don't forget what happened to Amit Shah and Narendra Modi when they were accused and being summoned by same very agencies and were made to sit for hours and hours. In fact, Amit Shah was made to basically not be in the state of Gujarat.
He was allowed to be in Gujarat, yes.
Yes. So payback is a very real thing in politics.
And let me try and connect this, Yashwant, with the bulldozer politics of Yogi Adityanath. Now, even when the Congress party says critical things about the BJP, again, it's acha, theek hai, ab dekh liya humne. But these are very serious issues, what is happening. I mean, the UP police is demolishing the house of this activist called Javed Ahmed in Prayagraj on the allegation that he was part of a procession around the former BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma, who we know that she made critical remarks, derogatory remarks against the Holy Prophet. So, isko lekar bhi, the Congress party has not been able to penetrate the politics of what is happening inside UP.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because, all said and done, I will just quote you the few of the data. We do the daily snap polls for the ABP network and on the daily things. So, about a week back, there were three questions that we asked. I mean, and the answers were very clear from the public. Number one, huge majority said that what Nupur Sharma said was wrong. Nobody should be. Number two, huge majority said nobody should be allowed to offend anybody's religion or pagambars or gods. Number three, BJP did the right thing by expelling Nupur Sharma.
No, she's not been expelled. She's
expelling or whatever. I mean, that thing.
Right, suspended.
That she was punished. That's the right thing to do. Number four, huge majority said that rioters should be punished even with the bulldozer policy. Now, all these four answers came in together because all four questions were asked together.
So they were in favor of bulldozer.
At that point of time, almost 77%. Almost 77%. It was a huge majority. And that was right after the next day when the Kanpur riots happened. Now, when we fielded the same similar kind of a question yesterday on whether the bulldozer should continue, that 77% dropped down to about 40%. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge drop because people were saying that, okay, bulldozers against the rioters is fine, but we did not say bulldozers without the due diligence or legal process. So be very clear. People do not want rioters. People are happy to see Singham style of policing. But at the same time, people do not want to see illegal way of policing. People do not want to see somebody's house being demolished without the legal sanctioning of doing so.
But it doesn't seem like that. I mean, if you look at social media, if that is an indicator, then you have thousands of people coming out on the streets in support of Nupur Sharma and Naveen Jindal. And it doesn't seem as if the BJP, the ruling party, whether in UP or in Delhi, has been made aware of the results of your poll, Yashwant.
Well, first of all, the more we are talking to the common people on the ground, Jyoti, the more I am realizing and confirming that social media is not at all reflective of reality. Number one. Number two, I am getting very, very confirmed the same day when social media was absolutely abuzz with pro Nupur Sharma sentiment. Yes. Almost like 70% plus people, including the 70 majority, almost like 64-65% of NDA voters saying Nupur committed a mistake and BJP did the right thing by showing her the way. That's the majority of the NDA voters which they said that. So it's very clear social media is not at all. First, one should never look at the social media to understand what the real Indians are thinking.
Okay.
Second thing which I am understanding, that people are not reacting just for the heck of reacting. When they say Nupur is wrong, when they say nobody should be offending anybody, one thing, they also say that no rioters should be allowed to destruct a public property and the harshest possible punishment should be given. And then they also say yesterday that we said that bulldozer thing is right, but not without due diligence, not by going by illegal thing. See, what I'm simply trying to say, we feel public is complicated. We feel that public is in gray area. But the more you talk to public, you find out that actually that's not the case. Public is very, very just. Public is very clear in what they want and what they do not want and what they appreciate and what they do not appreciate. What happens is that people or politicians, for example, I know when the first poll came in that 77% saying that bulldozer against the rioters is fine, Yogi's entire machinery pulled it out and they will drum it like anything. They drummed it like anything. But when today the number goes in that, people are saying don't do it without the legal sanctity of it, they will not pick it up. But because that's not something which is going along what they are looking for the public appreciation.
But the point is, Rahul, is that if Yogi Adityanath and his machinery is not picking up this particular poll survey of Yashwant's, the C voter survey, because it is going against his politics, that unless you have the law behind you, you cannot demolish somebody's house. But the fact is that nobody is making any statements in the BJP. Nobody is being critical of Yogi, even privately. कोई तो हमको कुछ सुनने में नहीं आ रहा है कि there is some criticism कि जो योगी आदित्यनाथ की पुलिस ने करा है वो गलत है.
That may be true, that you're not hearing these criticism, which is right. But you see, there are a couple of things. First, what I agree with Yashwant Bhai completely is that, in fact, on all these things, there is no contradiction in public mind. And that's very important. What we tend to do is we basically create a narrative or ideological frame, and we think that all these things don't fit together. Whereas in public perception, these things are basically not contradictory. Those who are rioters, they should be punished, but don't punish them without doing due diligence. All these things, if you think, are not contradictory. But is there not criticism within the BJP of the bulldozer politics? I don't think that those voices may not be loud. In fact, before all of this, the Nupur Sharma and Prophet Muhammad controversy broke out, there was a conversation going on, and people were asking these questions. In fact, journalists asked me this question, that why is bulldozer politics not continuing in UP? Is Yogi now ready to take the second leap and present himself as a more sort of like a statesman where he can plunge into national politics? Is he being sort of like thinking that he needs to change his image and everything? What happened after the Nupur Sharma controversy? I think the riots on Friday gave BJP another sort of like lease of life. If the riots had not happened the way it had happened, there was much more criticism that that now BJP is taking things too far. But once the riot happened, the perception of the public again changed. That, you know, now we need a party like, so there is now more sympathy for even people like Nupur Sharma. The kind of, like, there was less sympathy for Nupur Sharma in the last week of May than it was after Friday. See what public is, and perhaps
when you say riots, when you say riots, are you talking about the processions, the gatherings that came out that Muslims were bringing out?
Also the violence.
Yes, violence.
And the violence. But no, this is absolutely there is absolutely no justification for the violence. And then you had the death threats against Nupur Sharma, especially by that AIMIM MP. Now, absolutely no justification about that. But also, I just want to point out here that all this also happened after the criticism of the Islamic world. Before that, nothing of the sort had happened. No, I'm sorry. There was one riots in Kanpur on the, I think on the 3rd of June, there were riots in Kanpur in which 22 people were injured.
It actually happened, Jyoti, even before that. But the way, I will just try to take it a step further, where Rahul said. I try to analyze how the public perception is framed on the timeline. I mean, what has happened is that we are now completely focused because of the geopolitical events and criticism on Nupur Sharma and like that.
Right.
At the same time, somehow we are forgetting that people were also witnessing blasphemic comments in terms of humiliating Hindu gods by way too many leaders, way too many journalists as well, and way too many fact finders, and everybody in all together that forms the sphere, who take a stand against the BJP.
Mm-hmm.
So what has happened is that while the spark happened to fly after Nupur Sharma incident happened, that she said the wrong thing which nobody should have said, and everybody went after that, and from that point onward the story and narrative was different. But the public recollection, or the common people on the ground, are also very clearly witnessing that nobody said anything, but so many wrong things were said, retweeted, confirmed, laughed on, joked about the Hindu gods. So what I'm simply trying to mention, trying to say here, that while the public is very clear on what is right and what is wrong, and when they say nobody should offend anybody, that includes that thou shalt not offend the Hindu gods as well.
That's right.
So in public narrative building, Rahul is absolutely bang on. The moment that riot happened, the moment that procession happened on the Friday, that sympathy factor swinged in the other way. Because public is also saying, boss, ye acha hai aapka. एक ने गलत किया तो आप चिल्ला रहे हो, दूसरा जो गाली दे रहे हो आपने उसको तो कुछ नहीं बोला. And now that they are rioting, they are throwing stones, they are putting fire on the public buses and public property and everything. How can you justify that? Now, when in that context you ask them कि कल दंगा हुआ और आज अगर आप उनसे पूछोगे, do you appreciate Yogi's bulldozer policy? They will say, hell yeah, they should be done. Because that's the basic knee-jerk reaction any person would give. But a week later, when the sanity prevails and they say, well, in the name of doing justice, what Yogi is actually doing is like, putting his own agenda and in doing something which is not justified by the law or natural justice, they are also saying, boss, बाकी ठीक है, ये ठीक नहीं है आपका.
सही है जी राहुल आप बताइए.
It is absolutely correct. What is happening here that as if in a selective permeability, the politicians who are absolutely okay to pick and choose whatever suits them, but unfortunately in the media and other civil society space, that tendency of selective permeability has cropped in. Somehow we are somehow discussing or looking at a spheres where people like to look into plus, minus, neutral, and putting the spread across that, okay, this is what the public is saying, and this is appreciative, this is not appreciative. In a 360-degree holistic view, that is absent. And that is where I think, we have to work really hard on getting back that narrative.
Yeah, Rahul, what are your comments on this?
Comments on, is there a particular question?
No. The question is that what you were saying earlier and in continuation of what Yashwant was saying is, I want to ask you now, the Yogi's politics of the bulldozer politics that is now in fact becoming popular in other parts of the country, whether it's in Delhi or in Madhya Pradesh. Now, is this being justified? Is it being sanctioned by the party, by the BJP? And the fact is that not that many people in Delhi, you saw a lot of criticism against the bulldozer politics, but you have not seen a sort of a national criticism about it.
No, Jyoti, I think that we tend to think that this is an easy situation for BJP. I've written a piece on this. This is going to be very, very difficult for BJP going forward. And the reason is following. If Mohan Bhagwat is coming out and saying finding shivling in every mosque is not the right strategy to go forward, we are not going to agitate for any new temple. JP Nadda saying the same thing. This is coming from that like BJP president and RSS chief. This definitely is now the thinking of top BJP RSS leadership, that the heating up strategy or creating controversy on everyday basis is not good for BJP, because now BJP is not in opposition. It is the ruling party. If you keep creating controversy, then even within your own support base, people are going to say, "Bhai, aapki sarkar hai, kar lo." Right? So agitation route is good when you are in opposition, not when it in governance is going to put them on a back foot. That's point number one. Second, what it is also doing, it is derailing the agenda, ideological agenda, which the top BJP RSS leader wants to push forward.
Which is
basically, I don't know, but think about it. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Kashi would like to project the Kashi corridor thing, not the Gyanvapi mosque thing, right? So basically, in that sense, what PM and the BJP chief wants to do is hijacked by the lower ranks of BJP leaders. This is not good for the top, right? Third, going forward, this will, like, if you allow this to happen, so you can keep talking in Delhi that, oh, BJP wants this to happen. But if you allow this to happen, then the hardliners will gain more power within the BJP ecosystem, which is not good for the BJP, because in last 10, 15 years, what BJP has tried to do is marginalize people like Praveen Togadia, Ashok Singhal, so that they can basically create a wider social base for themselves in the society. Top BJP RSS leadership knows that you cannot win elections in this country without being a wide Hindu support base, right? So allowing hardliners is not a good strategy going forward. They are in a real dilemma what to do at the moment. And that's why this message is coming from the top that, bhai, we are not going to agitate anymore. Don't do all of this. So there is, I think, now, but it's also difficult once you allow the tiger to run amok. It's also difficult to control. So what you did in first 6-7 years did not speak enough when you should have spoken enough.
But that's very interesting what you're saying, Rahul, because if you compare the Modi government with what Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government was, I mean, you had Muslims in his cabinet. There were Muslim political leaders who were also advisors. And that is more or less absent in today's BJP. So in a sense, the politics has already shifted. I mean, this is not anything new. We have seen this for the last 8 years. The politics has already shifted to the right. Now you are saying, if I understand you correctly, that the politics is shifting even further to the right, a more rigid, hardline, extreme right-wing politics, which is, say, manifested by Yogi Adityanath. But do you think it could also shift further to the right, Yashwant, and that maybe Yogi is also being challenged by that?
No, absolutely. I totally agree. Whatever, every word that Rahul just said, because, I can see the challenge for the BJP. And I can also see that, the rabid right-wing extreme is not just being anti-Muslim. That is also quite a strong element of the casteist behavior as well. And which is completely a death sentence for the new BJP broadband of getting SC, ST, OBC into that, So BJP, come what may, cannot compromise on that extension of their vote bank now.
So can you explain that? Can you explain that a bit more when you talk about the casteist connect?
I think it goes pretty much hand in hand. If you will look into the profile or the readings or the writings or the behaving of extreme right-wing sphere, that extreme right-wing sphere also has a tendency to be anti-OBC, anti-Dalit, and anti-bottom of the pyramid. You know what I'm trying to say? And that doesn't fit well with the electoral mapping that Mr. Modi or the BJP under Modi, or for that matter, even RSS in their extensive work among the tribals and the Dalits, is nowhere supportive of that particular growth, if one may say so. So obviously, their challenge is now to cap this extreme right, and to keep it in a limited way without infecting their newfound support. However, on the other side, the problem of balancing out, as you know, I was reading the piece Yogi Bhai has written for the print, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, on the two-part, that the problem that he's facing with his liberal friends, when he said that we should not be very happy with Arab countries,
That's right.
taking a stand on that. And look at the way he has been cornered out. I can sense the similar sense when Pratap Bhanu Mehta ji wrote in his piece, about how the idea of secularism cannot be championed by projecting Aurangzeb as a hero. So those kind of things, these are intelligent people. They are understanding why a wrong thing by Yogi get justified in the public perception because something else is also happening. Where people feel, yaar, acha theek hai, tumhara ye sahi, to hamara ye sahi. It's tit for that kind of, it's a basic human reaction, Jyoti. We all are basically tit for tat kind of people. But when the senses prevail, when we calm down, and when you talk to them in a deliberative way that, okay, this is the thing, what do you feel? Then the real Indian actually is a very, very justified person, he or she, who thinks of natural justice, who thinks of, has the idea of going the right way and says the right should be done in the right way. It should not be done the wrong way. So we are dealing with two different problems, Jyoti, right now in India. One is the extreme right of playing their own agenda, and another one is the problem of the liberals, that anything that is not left to me is not left enough, or anything who is not liberal as me is not liberal enough. So in a way, a huge centrist population or electorate is being kind of forcibly pushed towards the right side of the spectrum. And which is not required, which is the problem of the current area is.
That's really fascinating. But let me ask you the last couple of questions, Rahul, to you. Now, the reaction of the Arab world, of the Islamic world to Nupur Sharma, how is it perceived in India, both by the Muslim community? Did they feel, do you feel that they felt more emboldened to speak up? And how did it sort of the centrist vote bank that Yashwant is indicating? How did it manifest there?
So perhaps Yashwant bhai may be better able to comment on this question. How is Muslim public reacting to the questions in the survey he asked? But of course, there would be some sense of relief, right? If you are being continuously pushed in corner for many years, suddenly there is a voice of support internationally, and the government is basically forced to stand down, right? As soon as there was a reaction in the Arab world, you saw government taking action, right? And so that may have emboldened a certain section of Muslim population that yes, there is someone who's going to stand for us, and even the BJP government has to basically listen to those people. Governments because of the international economic system and other things. But is Muslim sort of like, would you say that like a large section of Muslim population don't see the problem which Yashwant is reflecting? They do. They are also behaving very much like Hindu community, where they want natural justice to prevail, right? They do see this problem that they would not, like, of course, if they have problem with their own god being insulted or ridiculed, they have a similar problem when Hindu gods get ridiculed by a section of people who perhaps do not find religion or culture, and they think religion and culture is something alien, is not rational, should not be part of human life, right? A normal Hindu or a Muslim is like keeps religion and culture very close to them. For them, it's their everyday personal realities. Yes, and so I think they do see this dichotomy which gets created on social media or television channels or opinion pages, where and that's why you will keep hearing the average citizen, be it Hindu or Muslim, will say that they use the euphemism of politician. But I think now it should go beyond politician, that there are some people who always try to create problems between two communities. And it's not just politicians. I think there are vested interests beyond politicians who want to keep the pot boiling. And that's the loss of the centrist space.
Okay, last question to you, Yashwant. Would you agree with Rahul's comment that there is this loss of the centrist space? And I also want to connect back to the opposition presidential candidate. We don't know, there is no candidate right now. There's only media reports, whether Farooq Abdullah or Gopal Gandhi. But this loss of this centrist space, my question is, how are the regional parties responding to this?
Well, I think they are doing real politics, and very pragmatic politics to start with. First of all, if you look into the non-BJP governments, like BJD or the YSR, or for that matter, even TRS on so many accounts, towing the BJP line in the Rajya Sabha and standing with the government for most of the time, largely, rather than. And then they have their internal politics as well, because they know, like for example, Telangana, their main problem is with the Congress. If the Congress goes down, they are happy.
Right.
in that way. There are too many things to be read and analyzed in that way. But the regional politics are politicians or political parties are playing their own thing, which suit them. And that has nothing to do with any pan-India alliance against the BJP or like that, the way it is being portrayed right now. I believe they are playing just their own game, safe game, because they feel that they have a very good chance of defeating the BJP. They have done so many times at the regional level, at the state level, and they don't want to do anything which would probably jeopardize that kind of contest in the next assembly election cycle. However, as in the very first opening remarks of Rahul, he did mention that the symbolic fight of the presidential election is a norm. It has always happened. Even, when T.N. Sheshan was the Shiv Sena candidate, managed to win 5% of the votes, while 95% went to his competitor. And then BG swelled to, even with the unanimous choice of APJ Abul Kalam, the left parties did ensure that he doesn't go uncontested. You know, Captain Sehgal Captain Sehgal was made there. So there is a symbolism in the contest. There is a symbolism in understanding what is the which side of the line who is standing where. However, at this point of time, once Mr. Sharad Pawar said no, because he is a very intelligent person, if he says no, there is a reason why he said no. And once that he said no,
what is the reason? What do you think? Why do you think?
For me, it was over. The day he said no, I think that it's more of a formality. I don't think that there would be any big challenge of sort. And if the opposition tries to put in, unfortunately, again, I mean, though Farooq Sahab is a great guy, Abdullah Sahab is old politician, but unfortunately, him contesting or pitching right now would probably, take the narrative of the Kashmir and this thing even on a greater scale. So I don't think any politician, regional politician or party which wants to play safe with the center-state relationship would go too much against the present equation at this point of time. Also keeping in mind that 5 years back, the Electoral College was not that pro-BJP. Right now, Electoral College is even more heavily biased towards the BJP.
So in a sense, the BJP has the numbers. Is that why?
Yeah.
Is that
of course
they at the moment the total vote count in favor of BJP plus is 49%. So the election is an entire opposition, including YSR and BJP and everything, is 51%. So BJP candidate will win. There is no doubt about that now. The question is, who is BJP going to field as a president and a vice president? That's going to be Modi's message going forward for many reasons. See, RSS 100 year is coming in 2025. So they would like to have someone who is head of the state, comes from perhaps RSS background. This is my just thinking, right? Second, the current president will be basically presiding over the next government formation in 2024. So they are not going to go for a name who might cause even a slightest bit of a trouble. So you may think people keep talking about Mayawati or Narendra Modi is not going to take that risk, even if it's 0.01%. And so most likely the BJP person will have a BJP RSS route. The question is what kind of identity they want to play. Last time they played with Ram Nath Kovind, and subtext was a Dalit president, right? And that's why you saw BJP making deep. I'm not saying all gains came because of that, but then symbolism in politics matter. So the two names that BJP is going to propose as the president and vice president, it will have a lot more symbolic values in which direction the party is heading.
So any names
I will not be surprised with a tribal name, with the RSS route for the presidency. I will not be surprised with the Muslim name for the vice presidentship either, given the kind
Arif,
of...
there are some names in the media. Arif Muhammad Khan's name is being mentioned.
Yeah, Arif Bhai probably, if I think of it that way, he might fit in the block of becoming the vice president. And more so, particularly in a time, as Rahul mentioned, the 100 years of the RSS. Also, these are the times when we are going to probably look at the formation of uniform civil code. So having a minority leader in one of these two posts will have its own symbolic gesture of.
So let me ask you both if you have any names for the BJP's presidential candidate. Have you heard anything?
Rahul bhai, would you like to go first?
No, I don't want to pick any names because that's a bit bad. See, I think I would rather just keep thinking on what the strategy is. So last time they also had, just don't think in terms of caste or religious identity, but they also had an interesting combination, president from north and the vice president from south. So whether east or west or those kind of, BJP is going to do all these calculations before putting forward the name. And so that for me is BJP is really serious about expanding in South. So there may be a name from South for the president's post, but I don't know what names could be there. And same way, I think there has been a discussion about getting a tribal woman as in one of these positions. But again, what's the strategy behind? I don't know. So for me, I would wait for the names to come. But all
more
these
than the name, I totally get it. Rahul is getting. I mean, more than the name, it's the composition of the profile. So he is bang on. Tribal, women, and a minority. So these three things between the two posts, but either ways, non-negotiable roots in the RSS and the BJP.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's the profile you are looking at. Now just pick and choose whomsoever in your profile.
I think my homework is cut out for me, but definitely we will be watching this space over the next few days, weeks, and see what happens. But thank you both so much for explaining the politics of India over the last few weeks. And of course, I will be coming back to you for more in the days to come. Thank you both, Rahul Verma and Yashwant Deshmukh, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti.